Welcome back to Another World with my smartphone. Anime review episode number 8. This I'm reviewing the I think this is the 18th episode. Yeah, 18th episode of the season of the series, which is called The Alchemy Ward and the Unexpected Reunion. Now, I did a little more reading when I was basically trying to check and see how much was adapted for this episode. Based on what I read, it looks like, though, that last week episode a lot more than I expected it did. I mean, yes, it did adapt from like the rest of the final chapter of book 4, the entirety of first chapter of book 5, and it looks like not the first 2 pages. Like I thought, it basically stopped like the first page or 2, chapter 2. Oh no, it adapted the first half of the freaking chapter. So I'm like, damn! Like last episode covered a lot of material. This episode covered the rest of that chapter. Like, they did skip some small bits here and there. But nothing real. Mostly put stuff they skipped there was a process about creating the knights, which they do show in the episode. They do in fact also have portions of chapter 4 of this book in particular. I don't think it fully adapts the chapter. No, it basically like skips some portions. Yes. Though I think the rest is probably adapted for next week. And it seems as though we're going... Yeah, this is the way it looks for next week's episode. That we might be going into, like... We're probably going to finish up adapting, like, this book. Like, basically the rest of, like... I'd say probably the rest of this book in particular. And maybe moving on to basically book number 6. I mean, it is possible. Yes, I think that they're going to do that for next episode. Like, finish this chapter here and probably go through the first 2 chapters. Let's see. I'd say probably the rest of this book here and probably the next first chapter, book 6. And they'll probably go through, like, for the one from 2 weeks from now, they're probably going to go through maybe chapter 2 and maybe 3, maybe. But it depends. Well, here's the thing. The whole scene with Tabaki from last week's episode, it turns out it's actually from chapter 2. Yes, the whole thing of her showing up and explain what the heck going on, and of course the other stuff, that's all from chapter 2. They basically adapt this out of order. Which, okay, fine, whatever. So, in the case what happens this episode, we start off with basically Toya and the girls finding this thing. By the way, this is actually like a little over halfway into the chapter when they finally start up this episode. Because I thought maybe they skipped something. No, this actually was that last week. So they basically come across this giant circular thing. I think this is possibly another teleportation circle. And to where it goes, it's like, oh, a teleportation circle. Okay. Activates it. And, well, he looks around. Oh, yeah, this is definitely a Babylon area. Is this what he's looking for now? He's told before. Now, he's already got the workshop. And, like, he's already got the garden and the workshop. This is the third one he's encountered so far. And of course, here he meets Belle Florica, I think her name is. Excuse me. Belle Floria. Yes. Yeah, so her thing is like, oh, hello. And instead of giving him like a proper test, like, she proceeds to grab his hand and have him touch her breast, groping her, and then proceeds to make out with him in order to get his DNA. They do explain also the book, apparently, they cut this explanation out in the episode, but apparently his lower lip went numb during this exchange. Yet the book explains in detail of this whole freaking kiss. Just to get his just get his registration, like, oh, call me Flora, okay? And he brings on the girls, like, somehow they're there, which they cut out. Now, here's the thing. When they have them show up in the last 2 places, usually Toy opens up a portal, and they're there. Here, they're just there. It's like they cut it out. If you're curious, though, that kind of happened in book 2. So do explain about the whole thing with the alchemists. They kind of basically took portions from this chapter and the fourth chapter, chapter 3, 4, 2, and 4, and combined them for this one scene, just to speed stuff along. And my guess is JC Step probably is trying to get this stuff out. Like, they're probably, and this is my personal theory with this, that they're probably trying to get this episode, like, let's say, get all the important stuff in one scene, instead of have this scene here, and then have the scene explain more of it later. Have it happen here, just save on time. So they explain it's for medical research. Let's go over the air stuff, of course. And then it's shown a little bit later about creating other stuff later on in the episode, which they do mention here. Now, one thing they cut out here is that Toya gives her an office in the castle to, well, do her regular stuff. Which I'm surprised they cut that out. That would be important to see. And then, like, right afterwards, like, you're probably thinking, like, what's next? So, after having a chat with her, she proceeds to, well, announce himself to you and the two twin, Elsa and Lynn's families. First, Yu's family, which, of course, they cut the mention of the fact that, well, when he went to Ishin, he actually brought them to his castle with Yu's brother, who was not in the... I think it was mentioned in the book, but they cut it out for some reason. It's a very brief scene where Toya basically, like, asks basically for their blessing, and he got it, no problem. And it looks like, you know, tempting, and of course, Yu try to basically do it herself, and her mother basically just says, don't worry about it, it's perfectly fine. And then he goes meets Elsa and Lou's uncle, which they cut out the fact that their parents are deceased. Of course, the book mentioned that, the episode did not. Yeah, it's like, if you want to read that information, read the damn book. Okay, now the whole thing with the exchange of basically of Toya going to see Elsa and Lynn's aunt and uncle, that comes from chapter 4, which... not surprising through that in here. So the scene itself is mostly accurate. I'm surprised. So they did trim it down a bit, but how her uncle reacted to him, like, it's a bit cut out here, but it's fine. So basically he's bowing to him, and yep, and of course they also kept in the fact that, well, Elsa and Lynn's decided to keep some descriptions about Toya in their letters. And it's like, I think he was sick of the girls are blushing, which, yes, did in the book, too. And then, like, right after this, we have it where Toya receives more books for the reading library. And, of course, Renee is there. Of course, I'm seeing her, I'm like, there is a story plot for her, and they're cutting it out for no reason. Yeah, there's an important thing with her, and I'm hoping they really adapt, because... that is a really cool scene in the book, and I'm really hoping they adapt it for a future episode. If not for this season, maybe for season 3. So, he tries a flight, which, yes, is from the book. It's from chapter 4. It's actually kind of the beginning of chapter 4, because they kind of move stuff around a bit here, which, okay. Then he flies around for a bit, and of course he relies on Elsa's, lies on her lap, which, yes, does in the book too. And, of course, has her briefly fly. And then, of course, takes on the balcony. And then, of course, meets up with Knights. And then, of course, he decides, okay, we need to find the earpiece soon as... and then, oh, by the way, in the case of what happened with an uncle, I mentioned about the Thunder Bears, which he beats them all off screen. Which, if you're curious, though, is that accurate to the book? It is. And then, basically, after counting all of them, then he runs Ende in his second appearance... actually, his third appearance overall in the entire series. Now you're probably thinking, is the anime cutting out his appearances in the light novels? No. Here's the thing about him. He only appeared at the end of book 3. He appears briefly in book 4, and he appears here in book 5. The thing is, they're not cutting him out because he's not appearing very much. It's not until a little bit later in the books his whole deal. He does explain about the phase, like what they're actually here for. When, of course, Toya runs to him, he does ask him, he does reveal some information about them. Number one, the fact they're here looking for the King Core. Ende is looking for the same thing too, but he's not. And apparently, they don't care about the fact they're killing people when they look for this core because they think the hearts are interfering with the whatever the core is supposed to be. Yes. And that's the reason why they're here. Of course, Toya does not bother to ask, "Hey, did you meet a perverted woman named Regina Babylon?" Yeah, I was kind of hoping he would ask that because she was around at the same period of time, and he didn't. And you're probably thinking, like, did they cut that out of the anime? Did they basically cut out the fact he may have met her? No, it was not cut out because it was never brought up in the conversation in the first place. And then they have of the castle, and then of course to find out more about where the rest of the Babylon stuff goes up in the sky. So he decides to form a contract with the Flame Emperor. The description of him is pretty accurate. And of course they summon him, well, her, which of course they kept pretty much accurate to the book itself. Which, this is what the Flamer looks like in the book. And yes, she looks like this in the anime too. Where Joy introduced herself to her. Well, actually, Kohaku introduced herself to her. And she agrees to become like contract. No test or anything like the other two did. Just, okay, fine. Because basically you obtain these two. Fine, I'll become your... I think it's a Kako, yeah? I believe basically that he gave the name for her, and of course they give the ability to have birds search for their mating teleportation circles. Which here's the thing. Babylon. Oh yeah, basically Belfour is like number 21. Now, so the other ones I've found so far are the Sky Garden, the Alchemy Lab, and the Workshop. Basically, I've only found 3 of them. The other ones they're looking for is the Rampart, the Research Laboratory, the Library was something that Lynn want to get his hands on, the Tower, the Hangar, and the Storehouse. Yes. And if you're curious when the heck these things showed up. Now, Tower of Babylon showed up in basically book 6. Okay. Now, the library, that show, I believe, was book 8, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, in book 8. The Hangar also showed up in book 6 as well. Basically, we're going to have that one. Basically, we're going to be, well, more stuff there. So, that's the episode lives. I'm basically looking for everything. Now, there's a big, humongous section they skipped over in this book. And it's Toya going to a version of the Vatican in this world and basically helping out a pope there. Now, it is surprising. To me, it's surprising they skipped over this thing for this episode. Now, I was not expecting this episode per se, but I'm hoping at some point this season they adapt this because this is a lot of good material. JC staff, you're sitting on good material when it comes to this particular chapter. But nope, it looks like we're going straight to basically going to book 6 with the very next episode. Yeah, that's the way it looks for some reason. So, if you're curious though, this book was covered, if you think about it, in just 2 freaking episodes. Yeah, because the first episode was book 3, obviously. Book 4 was basically episode 2, 3. I'd probably say basically, I'd say 2 through 5 is probably book 4 and starting up book 5 of this one. And I'd say, based on how I see here, based on the descriptions, it looks like this book is going to wrap up basically with the very next episode. Yes, I definitely think so. We're going to basically, I'd say with episode 7, we're going to wrap up book 5, which, okay, that means this one's covered in 3 episodes. That's fine. not much issue with that. So we're going straight into book 6 next episode. So one thing I'm kind of hoping, though, I'm really hoping the season is not going to be 12 episodes. It should not be 12 episodes. Especially since they teased 2 other fiancés who were supposed to make a debut really soon. One of them makes debut in book 6, which I probably would think they would debut her. Who is it? Let's see. No, not this one. Let's see. Hilgard. Yes, I believe that we're gonna debut her in a future episode. Yes, I'd say based upon what we have here, we're probably gonna do in episode 9. Yes, that's probably where we're gonna debut. Basically, the next girl who's gonna debut in the series is probably episode 9. That I'm guessing of that. As for the last one, she probably will also show up in that very same chapter 2. So we're probably going to see episode 9. We're going to see debut of the last 2 fiancés. But we are going to see Toya get future new fiancé with the very next episode. Oh yeah, definitely. Yep. And this is going to be quite interesting, basically, to cover in a future episode. I'm hoping for it. Okay, so that's the particular view. I'm going to quickly do My Hero Academia, then I'll probably call it now because it's almost 11 o'clock anyways. Okay, next video. Bye.